Hello, everyone, and welcome to 60 Nightmares. I'm your storyteller tonight, here to guide you into the shadows. I know many of you drift off to sleep while listening, so before we begin, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Tell me, where are you watching from, and what time is it for you right now? Now settle in. Let the world outside fade away, because the nightmares are waiting, and it all begins right here. Story 1. Daniel's apartment, Prague, Czech Republic. My name is Daniel. I moved into an old apartment in Prague last year. At first, everything seemed normal, but soon, strange things began to happen. Late at night, I would hear footsteps above me, even though I live on the top floor. Sometimes, doors would creak open on their own, and I'd wake up to find objects moved from where I left them. One night, while I was half asleep, I saw a figure standing near my bed. It looked like a tall man dressed in dark clothes. I blinked, and he was gone, but the air felt icy cold. Later, I learned from a neighbor that a man had taken his own life in that very apartment years ago. Since then, tenants never stayed long. Now I keep the lights on when I sleep, but I still feel like I'm not alone in that place. Story 2. Laura's family house, Florence, Italy. My name is Laura, and I grew up in an old family house in Florence. For years, my relatives would talk about the strange things that happened there, but I never believed them until I experienced it myself. It started with whispers at night, faint voices coming from the basement. Sometimes I'd hear furniture moving, even though no one was down there. The air always felt damp and heavy, as if the house itself was breathing. One evening, while I was home alone, I heard someone calling my name. The voice was soft, almost familiar, but it came from the basement. I froze. When I gathered the courage to open the basement door, I saw nothing but darkness. Still, I felt as if someone was standing right there, watching me. Later, I found out from my grandmother that decades ago, a relative had died tragically in that very basement. Since then, the family always believed his spirit never left the house. Even now, whenever I visit, I refuse to go near the basement door. Story 3. Michael's hotel room, New Orleans, USA. My name is Michael, and last summer, I traveled to New Orleans for work. I booked a room in a very old hotel downtown. It had that antique charm, but also a strange heaviness in the air. The first night was quiet, but on the second night, I woke up around 2:30 a.m. to the sound of someone knocking on my door. When I opened it, no one was there. I thought maybe it was a prank. Later, as I was trying to fall back asleep, I heard footsteps inside my room. Slow, heavy steps. My heart almost stopped. I turned on the light and saw a man in a dark suit standing by the window. His face was pale, his eyes hollow. Before I could react, he simply faded away. The next morning, I mentioned it to the receptionist. She lowered her voice and told me that, years ago, a guest had jumped from that very window and died. Since then, several people claimed to see him at night. I checked out the same day. Story 4. Hannah's Farmhouse, Ontario, Canada. My name is Hannah, and I live in an old farmhouse in Ontario with my parents. The house is surrounded by fields and forest, and though it looks peaceful during the day, the nights are a completely different story. It began with strange noises from the attic, scratching, dragging sounds, as if someone was moving heavy boxes. But when we checked, the attic was empty. Then came the shadows, tall, thin shapes that darted across the hallway, even when no one was there. One night, I woke up to the sound of breathing in my room. When I turned on the lamp, I saw a figure crouched in the corner, its face hidden. I screamed, and in an instant, it was gone. My parents rushed in, but of course, they found nothing. Later, a neighbor told us that the farmhouse had once belonged to a man who disappeared mysteriously. No one ever found him, and some believe he never left. Now, every creak of the floorboards makes me wonder if he's still walking among us. Story 5. Ethan's Military Base, Warsaw, Poland. My name is Ethan, and I used to serve in the army, stationed at an old military base near Warsaw. The base was partly abandoned, with long, empty corridors and dark storage rooms that hadn't been used in decades. During night duty, soldiers often whispered about the ghost in the barracks, but I never paid attention until one night when it was my turn to patrol. As I walked through one of the deserted halls, I heard boots marching behind me. The sound was steady, as if a whole squad was following. But when I turned, there was no one. Seconds later, I saw a shadowy figure in uniform at the far end of the corridor. He raised his hand in salute and then disappeared into thin air. The next morning, one of the older officers told me that, during the war, a commander had been killed right there in the barracks. Many soldiers since then reported seeing him, still guarding the base. From that day on, I dreaded night patrols. Story 6. Isabella's Train Ride, Vienna, Austria. My name is Isabella, and I often travel by train between Vienna and Salzburg for work. One winter evening, I boarded the last train of the night. The carriage was almost empty, except for an old man sitting a few seats ahead of me. At first, everything was normal. The train was quiet, the snow falling outside the windows. But halfway through the journey, I realized I hadn't seen the man move at all. When I looked closer, he slowly turned his head toward me, and I swear his eyes were completely black. I froze in my seat. A few minutes later, when the train entered a tunnel, the lights flickered, and when they came back on, the old man was gone. The seat was completely empty. When I told the conductor, he looked uneasy and said, "You're not the first to see him. That seat has been empty for years, ever since a passenger died on this line. Since that night, I never travel alone on the last train again." Story 7. Clara's Haunted Theatre, London, UK. My name is Clara. I'm an actress in London, and I often rehearse at an old Victorian theater in the city. Everyone in the company talks about how the place is haunted, but I thought they were just stories, until one night during rehearsal. I was practicing my lines alone on stage when I suddenly heard applause from the audience seats. The hall was completely empty, yet the sound was clear, as if dozens of people were clapping. My heart started racing. When I looked out into the dark auditorium, I noticed a shadowy figure sitting in the front row. I couldn't see his face, but he was dressed in an old-fashioned suit. He just sat there, watching. As I blinked, the figure disappeared. But the seat where he had been sitting remained pulled forward, as if someone had just left. Later, one of the stagehands told me the legend of an actor who died on that stage over a century ago, and that he still returns to watch every performance. Now, whenever I step on that stage, I feel like I'm not performing for the audience alone. Story 8. My story is a little different, maybe more than just a little. I live with my Aunt Emma after losing my parents years ago. Emma isn't that much older than me. She got married once, but her marriage ended because she couldn't have children. Emma works at a bank, and so do I. We live in a quiet, upscale neighborhood in London. Life, on the surface, seems normal. We even drive together to work every day, sometimes in her car, sometimes in mine. People have asked for my hand in marriage, but I've always refused. Not for any clear reason. Maybe because after my parents died, I just felt life was passing me by, and I wasn't ready to carry the weight of marriage. But one day, everything changed. Emma and I went to my parents' old apartment. It had been locked for months, and we usually visited to air it out. We made coffee, sat down, and chatted. That's when I felt it. A warm breath against my ear, and a whisper. At first, it was muffled, almost like static. But then, clear words reached me. Sophia, I'm here. I'm with you. My heart froze. My skin crawled. I jumped up and saw a dark shadow rush across the room. Then, nothing. I fainted. When I woke up, Emma was shaking me, terrified. She thought I'd had a panic attack. I told her what happened. She laughed nervously and said, "Sweetheart, you need more sleep. It's just your imagination." But that night, leaving the apartment, I saw someone near the elevator. A man, tall, handsome. He smiled at me. I blinked, and he was gone. When I asked Emma if she saw him, she looked at me like I was crazy. That night, I dreamed of him. The same man, smiling, reaching for me. And then, the dream repeated, again and again, until I started to fall for him. His name came to me later, Michael. I met him, not only in dreams, but once in reality. On a trip by the seaside, late at night, he approached me. His smile was soft, his voice gentle. He said, "I know you, Sophia. I've seen you before. I'm Michael. I'm an architect." Before I could respond, he disappeared into the night. Days passed, weeks, months. I thought I'd imagined him, until he showed up again. This time, at my workplace. We talked. He took me to see one of the buildings he designed. He showed me his work with pride. But when we reached one unfinished tower, His voice changed. He said quietly, "This one, this building, is the most important to me." I asked, "Why?" He didn't answer. Instead, he looked at me, his eyes filled with sorrow, and whispered, "Sophia, I need your help." That night, everything unraveled. I discovered the truth. Michael was dead. He had fallen from that very building after refusing to join a colleague in cutting corners with cement and steel. His parents died the same day in a tragic car accident on their way to him. All three gone. Yet here he was, appearing to me, night after night. And then, I saw it, the night he died, replayed before my eyes like a vision. His colleague, angry, desperate, pushed him from the rooftop. Michael's scream, the silence after, the truth finally revealed. And the man who killed him, he came for me. He cornered me at the top of that same unfinished tower. His eyes filled with rage. He hissed, "You know too much, and now you'll be silent, just like him." I stepped back, terrified. But then, Michael appeared. Not as flesh, not as dream, but as something else. A spirit. He walked toward his killer, silent, steady. The man trembled, stepping back, eyes wide with horror. Step by step, Michael advanced until the man stumbled and fell, just like Michael did. Justice had been served. After that night, Michael didn't speak to me again. He only visits me in dreams, silent, smiling, watching over me. I don't know if you'll believe me. Maybe you'll call it a ghost story. Maybe you'll call it grief. But I call it something else. I call it love. Because Michael is gone, and yet he's still here. My guardian, my protector, my haunted angel. Story 9. My name is Ethan. I'm 32 years old, and I live in New York. For weeks, I had been drowning in silence, losing myself in the gray horizon outside my apartment window. Then one evening, my phone rang. The sound startled me, but when I saw the name on the screen, my heart almost leapt. Grandpa Edward. I hadn't heard his voice in so long. I picked up immediately. "Grandpa," I said with a sudden smile. "I was just about to call you." "You always say that, Ethan," Grandpa replied. He chuckled warmly. "But it's been 2 weeks. I miss you. I want to see you soon." "I promise I'll come." His tone shifted, heavy and serious. "Don't delay, my boy. I feel my time is near." His words cut me open. My chest tightened, and the world suddenly felt darker. I stared out at the ocean, trying to breathe, when another call came in. This time, it was Sophia, my fiancée. Her voice always soothed me, but even she couldn't erase the dread my grandfather had left inside me. That night, I dreamt of blood. My parents were fighting, my father's hands around my mother's throat, the sound of her gasping for air. Then I looked down and saw my own hands, shaking, holding a knife, dripping red. I woke screaming, drenched in sweat. I told myself it was just a nightmare, but a part of me was terrified it was more than that. The next morning, I couldn't take it anymore. I took the train north to Vermont, where my grandfather lived in the countryside. The ride was long. I drifted in and out of uneasy sleep, and once I thought I saw my parents sitting across from me. My mother smiled faintly. My father buried in a book. When I tried to speak, my mother raised a finger to her lips. Silence. I jolted awake, trembling. When I reached my grandfather's house, relief washed over me. The old wooden home smelled of history. Grandpa Edward, with his white beard and kind eyes, looked almost saintly. I hugged him as though I hadn't seen him in years. "Sit with me, Ethan," he said, opening a small wooden box. Inside was a faded photograph. A man, a woman, and their children. "Who are they?" I asked. His expression darkened. That was my brother, his wife, and their children, long gone now. He sighed heavily. "There is something I've carried all my life, and tonight you must hear it." As the fire burned, he began his confession. He spoke of jealousy toward his brother, his failures, and the strange beekeeper who once employed him. That man introduced him to something exotic: red honey, harvested from the cliffs of the Himalayas. Honey that could twist the mind, create visions, and in larger doses, kill. My grandfather admitted he had used it. He poisoned his brother's family, staging the deaths as madness and murder-suicide. His voice cracked as he whispered, "This guilt, Ethan, this curse, it is now yours." I couldn't breathe. The walls closed in, the room spinning. My grandfather's face blurred, flickering between shadow and flame. I stumbled outside into the night air, but before I could run, I felt a sharp sting in my arm. A needle. Voices shouting. My body collapsed. When I woke, I was surrounded by white walls. A soft voice said, "Ethan, you're safe, at St. Mary's Psychiatric Hospital." My throat was dry. "Where's my grandfather? Where's Edward?" The doctor looked at me with pity. "Ethan, Edward died years ago. What you heard, that wasn't him. That was you. You used the red honey. You killed your brother, his wife, and their children. Your mind broke under the weight of it. You created Edward to confess in your place, so you wouldn't face the truth." "No," I whispered, shaking. "No, that can't be true. I saw him. I spoke to him. But deep down, I knew. Edward was never there. He was nothing more than the voice of my own guilt. And the truth is, I am the monster I tried to bury, and there is no escape from myself." Story 10. My name is Michael Harris, and what I'm about to tell you has haunted me since the day my father died. I was 32 when he passed. A sudden collapse of his heart that left me reeling with grief and responsibilities I wasn't ready for. The inheritance included his estate, his company, and the great mansion in the countryside. But what I did not realize was that I had also inherited something darker, something that does not belong to the world of the living. The mansion itself was new, a marvel of modern design, built on the ruins of an old Victorian home. That house had burned down nearly a century ago, and people in the nearby village whispered that strange things had happened there. Cries in the night, unexplained vanishings, secrets that had been buried under ash. Of course, I dismissed it all. Superstition, I thought. I wanted solitude, a place away from the chaos of London. The mansion was perfect for that. Until the first night I slept inside. That night, I dreamt I was walking down a corridor. Not the polished marble halls of the new mansion, but a rotting wooden hallway, lit only by oil lamps that hissed and sputtered. The smell of damp rot was so strong, I could taste it. At the far end of the hall, I heard weeping, a woman's weeping. Barefoot, I followed the sound until I reached a door. Scrawled across the wood in what looked horribly like blood were numbers. 40, 11, 0, 0, 219. My hand trembled as I touched the door. When I pushed it open, I saw a dark figure kneeling by a pool of blood. The moment it turned its face toward me, I woke up. The following night, the dream continued from exactly where it had ended. This time the figure was gone, but in its place lay a knife. A cold, rusted blade that seemed to hum when I touched it. A voice whispered into my ear, "You shouldn't be here." I dropped the knife in terror and woke. But beside my bed, in the real world, from that moment, I knew I was trapped between two worlds. Each night, the dreams resumed, like a story continuing, chapter by chapter. I wandered deeper into the decaying house that should not exist. I found a staircase leading into a basement. Down there, I discovered a leather-bound notebook, its pages covered with the same sequence of numbers. 40, 11, 00, 219. Over and over, written in frantic scratches. On the last page, however, a single phrase stood out. "It's buried beneath us." When I woke, the notebook lay on my nightstand. I tried to fight it. I brought friends, James, Oliver, and Sarah, to stay in the mansion. They thought I was simply grieving, losing myself to nightmares. But when I fell asleep in their presence, I returned to the house. I saw the woman again, her white dress stained, her hair veiling her face. She whispered a lullaby, soft but broken. When she lifted her head, her eye sockets bled rivers of black. She screamed, and when I woke, the echo of that scream still reverberated in my bedroom walls. My friends swore they heard nothing. Yet they looked at me with doubt and fear when I showed them the knife. The days blurred. I craved sleep, craved the return to that other house. By daylight, I felt like a ghost in my own home, weak, unfocused, drained. But in dreams, I felt alive, pulled towards secrets I could almost touch. Each night revealed more, whispers of children, shadows darting just beyond my sight, walls that bled when I pressed my hand against them. And always, always the numbers, 40, 11, 00, 219. Last night, the woman appeared once more. She did not scream this time. She simply pointed at the floor. Carved deep into the stone beneath her feet were the numbers again. I touched the carvings, and the ground cracked open. A torrent of blood surged upward, drowning me, dragging me into blackness. When I awoke, those very numbers were carved into the wooden floorboards of my bedroom. I know now that this is no dream. The knife, the notebook, the carvings, they cross over. Whatever is buried beneath this mansion demands to be found. I feel it calling me every hour of every day. I can't eat. I can't breathe. I only want to sleep, to return to her, to the house that was never meant to exist. If you are reading this, know that tonight I will give myself fully to it. If I don't wake tomorrow, follow the numbers. Perhaps you will find me. Or perhaps you will find what should have stayed buried. 41100219. Story 11. Emily had always been drawn to old houses. Something about their silent stories, the way the walls seemed to remember every laugh, every scream, every secret. When she inherited the abandoned mansion on the outskirts of New Orleans, she thought it would be the perfect escape from her hectic city life. A place to finally breathe, to write, to be alone with her thoughts. The first day was deceptively calm. Sunlight filtered through cracked windows, casting jagged patterns across dusty floors. Emily ran her fingers along the cold wooden banister, imagining the grand parties this house might have seen decades ago. She didn't notice the shadows shifting just out of the corner of her eye. By nightfall, the mansion transformed. The wind whispered through broken shutters, and the creaking floorboards sounded like footsteps following her. Emily tried to brush it off as her imagination, but deep down, a pit of dread began to grow in her stomach. It started with soft noises, a whisper when no one was there, a door clicking shut by itself. Emily told herself she was alone, yet every mirror seemed to reflect more than just her image. Something lingered behind the glass, something waiting, patient and silent. The second night, she woke to a cold touch on her shoulder. Spinning around, she saw nothing. Shadows in the corners of the room seemed to pulse, moving closer. Her heartbeat raced as she whispered into the darkness. "Who's there?" Silence. A sudden crash made her jump. The sound came from the attic. Gathering every ounce of courage, Emily climbed the rickety stairs, each step moaning under her weight. The attic was empty, except for an old rocking chair that moved on its own, slowly, back and forth. Her phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. "You shouldn't be here." Emily's hand shook as she dropped the phone. The mansion felt alive now, breathing, watching, closing in. Every creak, every whisper, every cold draft told her she wasn't alone. Days blurred into nights, each one worse than the last. Objects moved on their own. Doors slammed shut. Shadows stretched impossibly across walls. The whispers grew louder, forming words she couldn't quite hear. Leave, now, or stay, forever. Emily knew she had to uncover the mansion's secrets. She spent hours sifting through old letters, journals, and photographs, piecing together the story of the family who had vanished mysteriously decades ago. Each discovery revealed more darkness, more malevolence, and a presence that thrived on fear. The journals described strange rituals, a fixation on shadows, and a belief that the house itself could trap souls. One letter stood out, a final, desperate note from the youngest daughter. warning anyone who found the house, do not listen. Do not look. They are always watching. One night, Emily awoke to the sound of whispering right next to her ear. Her breath hitched. She turned slowly and saw a shadowy figure at the end of the hallway, impossibly tall, its eyes glowing faintly. She froze, her mind screaming at her to run, but her legs refused. She stumbled backward, knocking over a candle. Flames flickered, illuminating the walls, just long enough for her to glimpse dozens of eyes staring from every corner. The air grew heavy, thick, with an unnatural chill. The mansion was no longer just haunted. It was alive, feeding off her fear. Emily realized that if she didn't confront it, it would consume her completely. She descended into the bowels of the mansion, to the cellar that smelled of mold and old decay. There, the darkness swirled like a living thing. "I won't let you win," she whispered, clutching a silver locket she had found among the old family belongings. The shadows recoiled, as if recognizing the token, hissing and writhing like angry snakes. Hours passed, like minutes, as she fought the oppressive darkness, tracing every memory, every story of the house, piecing together the ritual needed to banish it. Finally, she recited the words she had painstakingly deciphered, voice trembling, heart hammering. A violent wind tore through the mansion. Doors slammed, windows shattered. Then, silence. Emily collapsed, exhausted, yet alive. The oppressive weight lifted. By dawn, she emerged into the New Orleans streets, the city lights a fragile shield against the shadows that had followed her from the house. But even as she tried to reclaim normalcy, sometimes, when the wind howls through empty streets, she hears it again, the whisper from the shadows, "We are waiting." Emily learned that some houses never forget, and some shadows never truly leave. Story 12. My name is Leo Harper. I am 28, and life has always been cruel to me. I have no family, no siblings, no mother or father around. The last words I remember from my father, 8 years ago, were, "You're old enough now. I don't want to see you again." After that, I was left to survive on my own. Work became my only companion. I preferred night shifts, hiding from the empty city streets. During the day, I delivered pizzas. At night, I worked at a small grocery store for an elderly lady named Mrs. Sylvia Benson. Mrs. Benson had no children. She was lonely, but she treated me like a son. She would often say, "Leo, all I want is a quiet, safe life. You, my boy, are carrying too much." Her kindness became my anchor. I worked nights at her store and spent days delivering pizzas. The irony was that the grocery store paid better. Every cent I earned, I saved. Eventually, I rented a small apartment, a long hallway from the front door to my bedroom, with the kitchen and bathroom on the left. Finally, a space of my own, but not truly alone. A voice lived inside me, not mine, but distinctly present. Sometimes in the mirror, I saw lips moving, whispering words I couldn't understand. I knew it was a sign of something wrong with my mind, but it was impossible to ignore. One night, I awoke to find drawings scattered on the floor. Nooses, drawn with horrifying precision. Not my hand, not my doing. I panicked. I set up my phone to record while I slept, desperate to catch the truth. Watching the footage the next day made my blood run cold. My eyes were completely white, my mouth smiling. Not me, something else. After that night, sleeping became impossible. Shadows twisted in corners. Whispers floated from the walls. My money dwindled. I lit candles instead of using electricity. Fear consumed me. Then, tragedy struck. Mrs. Sylvia passed away. Found alone in her home, I felt the world collapse. I attempted the noose again. This time, something extraordinary happened. I fell, but did not die. Instead, I found myself in a vast desert under a burning sun, yet the sky was black. A voice called my name. Every step was agony. The ground cut my bare feet. Shadows danced around me. Strange, fleeting, terrifying. When I awoke in my apartment, I realized something incredible. I could see things no one else could. Spirits, echoes of the dead, presences that lingered in corners. Mrs. Sylvia, somehow alive, comforted me. Then I met Nina Caldwell, my mysterious neighbor. She offered me work in her apartment, which mirrored my own. Long hallways, rooms on either side, one locked. When I began painting, my brush moved on its own. I painted horrifyingly vivid images of shadows, twisted shapes, dark figures. I was no longer just Leo. I was both creator and witness, trapped in a nightmare I could barely understand. Nights brought horrors, unseen hands reaching for me, whispers in every corner, visions of murder and violence. Yet there was a strange beauty in the chaos as I painted. My art flowed perfectly, uncontrollably. I realized my life had changed. I wasn't dead, but I could see the dead. The spirits around me, Mrs. Sylvia, Nina, others, needed me. The apartment became a labyrinth. Hallways stretched endlessly. Rooms shifted in impossible ways. Nina guided me, but sometimes vanished, leaving me alone with my brush and the whispering shadows. I painted visions so vivid, I could hear them screaming. Figures bowed around grotesque men. Shadows writhed, twisting in colors I had never imagined. I ran, hid, painted. Every night was a trial. Shadows tried to control me, but I learned to distinguish the spirits who protected me from those who wanted to harm me. I saw love, guidance, hope, even among horrors. The brush became my weapon and my shield. I realized my life, though broken, had meaning. My art, my visions, my nightmares, they were a path. To survive, to understand, to confront evil, to save the trapped souls, both living and dead. Fear became not just darkness, but knowledge and power. And through it all, I painted, ran, hid, learned, and endured. One night, Nina whispered that my ultimate test was coming. A man named Victor Crane, a figure tied to death and darkness, had to be confronted. My brush revealed what no eye could see, what no one else dared confront. The line between reality and nightmare blurred, but for the first time, I understood. I was chosen. My failed suicide had not ended me. It had prepared me. Through horror, madness, visions, and terror, I learned. Survival isn't just living. It's seeing, understanding, and acting. My gift, my curse, my nightmare became my purpose. I am Leo Harper. I survived. I see what others cannot. And I will confront the darkness that haunts both the living and the dead.